Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I am your host, Mark Gabberty, founder of the Content Marketing Plaza, bringing you 3 new episodes each week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. And before we jump into today's episode, let me ask you a quick question. How much would your life change if you could make 6 figures from your content? Imagine being able to quit your 9-to-5 job, do what you love for a living, and spend more time with your family. That's what we help our students do at the Content Marketing Plaza, an 8-week program that will help you build your way to 6 figures via your content. You can learn more about the Plaza by heading over to contentmarketingplaza.com, which will be in the show notes. All right, let's jump right back into the episode. When we pursue the work that we're passionate about, it can get very exciting to see our message spread across the web, to be able to impact more people and really do what we love. But no matter what kind of work we find ourselves doing, there can still be some parts of it that feel a little frustrating. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how can we make our work less frustrating and how can we really grow our businesses also. That's what we're going to cover in this episode. So today's guest is a highly sought after speaker, business alignment coach, and the author of Transform Your Company. He recently launched a magazine and podcast called Confident ROI that shares business leaders' stories about what tools and concepts are working in the real world so listeners can confidently select the tool that will advance their company. Today's guest for episode 299 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Alex Vorobieff. Alex, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, it's great to be on Breakthrough Success with you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Alex, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I feel like no matter what kind of work we're pursuing, there's just some parts of it that are frustrating, and at the same time, if we pursue too many of those kinds of things, like maybe the necessary things like scheduling content, scheduling social media posts, may fit into that category for some people, but if we do less of the frustrating stuff, we could really work towards the successful things that we could really be doing to move the ball forward. So before we really dive deep into this episode, I'm wondering if you could give us some background and share with us why you decided to start the Confident ROI magazine and podcast.
Sure, Mark. I got my start, it's coming up on 25 years ago, on the finance side and accounting and cleaning up companies and banks that were in financial problems. I was working for an accounting firm and a consulting firm, and over the next 2 decades worked in cleaning up a lot of messes. And it was, it was fun figuring out things from a financial standpoint, and spreadsheets had a way of not talking back to you, and to me, painting a picture about where a company's doing well and where it might be losing money or having difficulties. But what I noticed over time was I was really just treating a symptom. Financial problems, not getting the results you want in a company, were really just understanding the numbers really didn't solve the problem. It was kind of like being a doctor and go, here's your problem, but it was a symptom. And so I started digging deeper in terms of, okay, what is the underlying issue? And I noticed across industries and different sizes of companies that there was a common denominator, and that a lot of times within companies, people just weren't on the same page in terms of answers to key questions. What is this company good at? What is its purpose? What's important for it to succeed? A lot of times those questions were never asked, or if they were, those answers were varied, and people were kind of rowing in different directions. So I ended up looking at these tools. There were tools out there to help get companies on the same page, and that's what led me to write my book, Transform Your Company. I was always helping companies, hey, how do we get people on the same page? There's so many business ideas and concepts to improve businesses but they were never talked about the order of how to use them and where to start. And a lot of times it seemed companies were always starting kind of the exterior of their business where the rubber meets the road with customers, and that could always be pretty frustrating. So the book gives you a framework on where to start improving your business and why a lot of companies start at the wrong end. What Confident ROI is, a podcast and a magazine, came along is I wanted to keep going and look at specific business improvement concepts and see, okay, what's working in the real world, either from company leaders to people who help companies implement it. What tools are working, what's not. And I was interviewing one leader who had implemented EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and they went from real financial difficulty in about 12 months, they hit their stretch goals. And you could just hear the emotion in his voice describing it. It was a challenging process, but this framework helped them do it. And so that's what Confident ROI does. It helps people hear from people in the real world implementing these ideas and concepts.
And it's really great that you're collecting all these examples and you're really looking into what really works in the real world. And you mentioned the tools aspect, because using the right tools can really make a big impact on your business. You refer to some of these really good tools as business alignment tools, which have allowed these really successful companies turn into unstoppable forces, the ones that you've guided. So I'm wondering if you could go a little deeper into business alignment tools. What are they? Why are they important? And which ones should we be looking at?
Sure. It was kind of a funny story. I was working with one client, and they weren't on the same page, and it was pretty frustrating for everyone involved. There was just constant kind of, the meetings were difficult. They couldn't make decisions. It kind of seemed like they kept going around circles. And I actually, I was trying, and I'd seen systems where it was things like EOS I mentioned earlier, to scaling up, to the breakthrough company. There's the E-Myth for smaller companies. And I was trying to articulate what they did. And it was difficult to do it because when you tell someone it's a planning system or a management system, their eyes roll back and they're already starting to get sleepy or bored or more frustrated. And I was trying to figure out what they did. And as I read these books and studied them, I realized, God, they kept using the term alignment or same page. And when I used it, I wanted my clients to explain to them, hey, these tools help you align your company, help you align your efforts. They got it. And actually, if you got time, there's a funny story how it really came to my mind on it. It was actually, I was really frustrated at Disneyland, and I had this like breakthrough moment, and that's what led to the book, actually. You have time for it?
Yeah, sure.
So I was frustrated, and I was trying to work with this one client, and I was sitting there, and my wife and daughter could sense I was frustrated. So they said, we're going to go on a ride. Why don't you finish your coffee? And I was watching the canoe ride, and the young guy from Disney was at the front of it. He's paddling really hard, and they had all the Disney guests on the boat, and some of them were paddling, some weren't doing anything, and some were the kids were kind of rowing against him. And he had one guy from Disney in the back, but I'm like, how long is this going to last? Because this reminds me of a lot of small businesses where it's all on the owner's back, and if the people as he adds them to the team aren't contributing, it just makes it harder. And it didn't last long. The Disney guide got him off to the side, and then within 90 seconds, he got this motley crew of Disney guests aligned and rowing around Tom Sawyer's Island in an efficient manner. And it was explaining to them essential things like, hey, he held up the paddle and he said, hey, this is your fun stick. It's really important. Here's how you hold it. He showed them where to put one hand on top, one on the bottom. And he said, it's important for you to know this because there's 3 rules here. And if we don't do them, we're not going to get backing around the island. He said, rule number 1 is if we don't row, we don't go. And he chanted it, and he got him understanding it. He said, number 2, don't splash. The water used to be blue, but it's not anymore. So other people don't like it. So don't do it. And he said, finally, 3, don't stand up in a canoe. Only a fool stands up in a canoe. But he said, luckily, I'm a trained fool. And so in just a few minutes, he gave them this kind of what they need to do, what not to do. He said, hey, we want to row together, and we're going to sing some songs to do that. And inevitably, we'll get out of alignment, but we'll stop, regather ourselves, and go. And bam, they were off. And I realized there's so many times in small businesses, people in bigger businesses, that the leaders take for granted. People know where they're going, what they can do to contribute, what they shouldn't do, and kind of wait for them to cross those invisible lines, and then they yell at them. And so just spending that amount of time a lot of times isn't done, but can be very beneficial and help align people's efforts.
That's a very interesting story, and it shows how one person can really impact many with the right guidance, really being able to accomplish some bigger goals that you can't really do on your own. And part of being able to accomplish that goal is identifying some of the problems. So the problems like not everyone was paddling, for instance. So for our businesses, how can we determine what problems exist that are holding us back?
Well, one is not making the assumption that people get it, right? That they can kind of see what you're doing and know immediately what to do. On the smallest form, when I started Confident ROI, I was in the podcast, I had somebody helping me with the audio, and I had my assistant who's in India helping me with posting it, and I had someone in England helping me with the show notes page, and it was a mess. And I could have gotten frustrated. That was kind of my initial thing, this is frustrating dealing with people. But I said, I can't do this all myself. I don't have the time to edit the audio, to review the transcripts, to write it up, to post it. So I had to take the time and kind of walk through the process with them and use the right tool so they knew what their role was, and they could see what was next for them, and the person down the line in the production process could. And we put in Google Sheets, and I was patient enough. I realized, God, if I can't get this to work, how can you get a bigger organization to work together? So it starts on those small steps and not getting frustrated when the process doesn't work, but looking at it from their perspective and helping them understand what they can do to make the process more efficient.
And I really like the idea of really thinking about the other person, because when you do work with someone, you delegate that first task, it seems like it's entirely the other person's fault if they mess up, while in most cases it's just that the other person didn't get the right instructions. So you could hire the best person, but if you don't give them the proper guidance on what to do, the job's not going to get done properly, no matter how good the person is who you hire. And I think that's one of the things that can make our work frustrating, when we hand it off to other people and they don't necessarily do a good job. Many cases, I'd say that's because of the person not giving instruction, but in other cases, it's the person. It's obviously a case-by-case basis, but what are some of your suggestions on making work less frustrating? Not just the communicating with assistants part of the work, but also just some of the other work that we do in general, and we may just hit this particular task and we think, this is frustrating.
I would say step back. I saw recently in a book there was a French saying to make a great advance forward, step back, because and answer some important questions. What is important? If you're taking the product or the process, what's really important in terms of that? Is it the look of something? Is it the timeliness of something? What's the order of priority? Because it's not always assumed. People don't always know. And so if you step back and define those things of what's important, but not always present, that's going to help guide people's decisions, because that's really what alignment is guiding all those little decisions that people make every day in terms of how they spend their time, how they're going to do a project, small or big. But they need a framework. They need something to kind of bounce off, something that I know I've worked with a lot of companies on pricing products, and what's important there is it's different depending on the customer, how they react. One thing that's kind of always true is don't send the pricing information, the detailed stuff, to the customer, especially in a business to business type of aspect. But it's a safe assumption not to do that. But unless it's really brought to the forefront on a regular basis, mistakes can happen.
Yeah, and no matter what you do, mistakes are going to happen. I mean, there's no such thing as being perfect. No matter how good your systems are, the mistakes are going to happen. It's just how we react, how we respond to those mistakes that allow us to either get better or continue making the same mistakes over again. And I mean, I know you've went into a lot of stories with Confident ROI. I'm wondering if you could share with us some of the new things you've learned ever since starting Confident ROI.
Well, the big thing is, since I wrote the book and also just talking with different neuroscience experts, is how we're wired. We're actually wired in a way that contributes to our problems, especially in business and getting frustrated. Our brain processes 11 million bytes of information per second, just from how we're feeling, the temperature, or what we're hearing, what we're seeing. But it has to process all that information so quickly that it does 99.9% of it below the conscious level. So, and we're predisposed not to want to slow down and think about something that doesn't match up with how our brain already sees the world, because it wants to process everything subconsciously. So when we were talking earlier about a mistake happening and there's a problem and how we deal with it, our brain is predisposed just to dismiss something that didn't go according to plan. It's a lot easier to blame somebody, to get upset about it, than to stop and ask a question. Okay, what went wrong? Your brain is literally saying, we don't have the energy or the time to do that. And especially if you're under a lot of stress, it's even more so. So this neuroscience of how we're wired is something that it's come to the forefront, and a lot of companies now are becoming more aware of it, and there's more neuroscience experts and psychologists that are helping people understand it and apply it in business.
And those are definitely some really great insights. I mean, the mindset and the brain, I mean, that you can learn a lot by really going deep into those areas, not just like strengthening your mindset, but knowing what's there, knowing some of the pitfalls, like how we are wired, as Alex pointed out, to like it's what's wired against us a little bit, but we have to rewire. And if we know how it is set up against us, we can better respond to that. And I mean, I think the mindset, that's just one of the big things we go back to again and again on Breakthrough Success, that can really hold a lot of people back, make people feel stuck regarding their goals. But I'm wondering if you believe there's anything else that really holds a lot of people back from reaching their full potential.
Well, it's definitely ourselves. And in my latest issue of Confident ROI, we talked about what Google found. And Google is a data-driven company, and it wasn't gushy or mushy in terms of people knowledge and how to work together. Google has a lot of teams work together because there's cross disciplines, and so they want to find out, why are some teams more successful. And what they found out was, after doing scientific research and bringing in research, it was really in how groups interacted and created what is called in the term psychological safety, because we tend to want to fight for our ideas, want to advance the ball, but that a lot of times that creates an environment where people on your team and yourself don't feel safe, and that you can't actually access the best parts of your brain to do your best work. And so how to work together in a team and create the right environment, where in today's world, with how fast we go and the different email tools and things, there's less interaction face to face. We actually got to learn how to work together more efficiently, because we're still wired as though we're a small group living on the savannah 10,000 years ago hunting game, and that we were predisposed to work together, because if we don't, we're going to die, because we're not going to get enough food. So now we have to actually work at it in order to get it right.
And it's interesting you mentioned how we are pre-programmed in the sense where we are that hunter-gatherer. I mean, it feels so very distant. Like, none of us remember that time when it was us, but there are certain things that can happen, like very far out, that still have an impact on our minds to this day. And another thing,
we have that software. We're running that software, but we're living in an environment that's not that. So it's kind of like, well, we got old software, and so there's always this conflict that keeps popping up. And we have to load a patch and keep working at that patch in order to be the most effective people.
Yeah, that is definitely an interesting take on it. I mean, you do have to make those kinds of adjustments, and life is definitely a series of adjustments that you make in order to get to where you want to go. And one thing that I believe is really essential are the habits that we develop. So I'm wondering if you could share with us some of the habits that you see as essential for your success.
Sure. I think we've entered, kind of in a big picture, I think we've entered this phase of the human experience where it's all about how to live the best life. I mean, we have enough food, we have shelter and that. And so we're all looking for how to live the best life. And I think that's intersecting with business and teams. Like, how do we get the most out of that? And that habit, I have to say, it could be considered clichéic, but the listening habit of really tuning in on the listening side. I went through an improv course, and one of the biggest takeaways, and I was surprised by it, was they taught you how to listen. Really listen to what the other person's saying, and that helps you understand where they're coming from, but also advance the conversation. And when you really understand, when the other person senses you're really hearing what they're saying, the trust grows. You're able to connect more. And so really listening, not just when you're talking to somebody, but in general, about what's going on, what's really going on, comparing that to their facial expressions, because when those don't match, that there's something up there, and it's an important clue. So that habit of today of really trying to bore in on what is really the person trying to communicate, is there a conflict, and how best to really hear it is a habit that takes some practice but has a lot of benefits.
That's an interesting habit that you mentioned. And I mean, at the very core, we are all just looking to live that best life, and we all have different definitions of that. But getting really clear on your definition of living a best life can really help you attain that lifestyle, and also some of the big goals that you set for yourself. And another habit that you should definitely consider is learning as much as you possibly can. And with that in mind, Alex, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
3 books that have a positive impact on us. Well, one of is in process of reading is Principles by Ray Dalio. And I like it because it really is a book that helps someone step back and define their personal principles as well as their business principles and how they overlap. And it's never something that's urgent, but is essential, because your mind will tell you when you're in conflict with some principle in your mind. But there's nothing like really defining it when it's not that urgent point. And it's important from a standpoint of how do you want to live and what's important to you. So Principles by Ray Dalio would be a recommendation. Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers is a great book for understanding it's kind of the neuroscience and why we feel the way we do in modern society. I took a neuroscience leadership course, and it was one of the books that was part of the recommended by the neuroscience, and it really breaks down in layman terms why our brain drives us nuts in today's modern society. And we talked earlier about we're running old software, and Saporsky, I'm probably pronouncing that right. He wrote it. He's a doctor, and really helps in terms of understanding what's going on and what you can do about it.
Alex, thank you for sharing those great book recommendations. We will include those in the show notes, markconverti.com/E299. We will also throw in content marketing secrets in there for anyone interested in driving more traffic to their content and generating revenue. That, again, will be in the show notes. And before we wrap up this episode, Alex, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
What's our purpose in life? Why are we getting up? And not only what's our purpose, and if we were in an organization, if it's ours, if it's something we're involved in, or we're going to enter that organization, what is its purpose? Especially if you get involved in nonprofits and you're doing that either on the side or as your focus in life is making sure that purpose of those organizations are aligned with your purpose. Because your brain will tell you if you're living in a way that's unaligned with that.
Alex, thank you.
Yeah, it'll tell you like in dreams.
Sorry about that.
Or nightmares, yes. Sorry, I'm being a bad guest. I'll shut up now.
No, you're doing great. I mean, you shared a lot of great insights, shared a really great question. So thank you so much for just sharing all of your great insights with us today. If you guys want to keep in touch with Alex, Confident ROI, that's a great place to go. You can also get a copy of his book, Transform Your Company, and he's got a lot of posts going up on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook as well. So all of those links will be in the show notes. But Alex, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing all of your great insights with us.
Oh, it's been great, Mark, and thanks for having me on Breakthrough Success.
Want to dominate the podcasting industry? Now you can with your free copy of my book, Podcast Domination. You'll learn how to launch, grow, and monetize your very own show. And whether you are a beginner or an expert, this book has a lot of golden nuggets for you. We'll cover the cost of producing this book. All we ask is that you cover the shipping. To get your copy, head over to markgaberti.com/PD.